The beginning was a breeze. I was having the time of my life. I was like, this book is so easy. This is going to be so awesome. I'm going to finish it so quickly. And then I got to the second act and I was like, okay, actually, no, this is not going to go quickly. And I was stuck in the second act for so long because I was just trying to figure out like the tone and the characters. I mean, I knew the characters, but it's different going from YA to adult. Um, and so trying to break free of my YA-ness, that was a challenge. And then writing the ending was also really challenging because I was trying to do it so quickly because the book was coming out so soon and I had already put it off so many times and we couldn't put it off again. And my editor was like, just finish it. Like, stop overthinking, stop stressing out about things, just write the story that you wanted to write.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creativity Worth Expressing. I'm your host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez, and today I have a repeat guest. She's coming back to talk all about her book. We have today A.P. Mobley, and the name of her book is AP. Can you remind us the name of your book?
The skeleton fairy.
And I have the Skeleton Fairy right here with me, and I'm excited because we're going to get into the story just a bit. No spoilers. But before we get into the book and the story, I would like to highlight you. So, for the audience, for the listeners, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really like dark fantasy inspired by mythology, so that's what I write. Um, I love rock music and let's see. I love Halloween and like St. Patrick's Day. Those are my favorite holidays. I love mythology and folklore, so that's what I write about. That's what I most of my days are consumed with. So,
Awesome. And how many books have you written or published so far?
um right now there are 5 novels and 2 short stories. But I do have an out of print novel and an out of print short story as well. That you can't really find anymore. So I think we'll just go with the published ones. So yeah, 5 novels, 2 short stories.
Okay, so you have five novels, two short stories, but you also have a podcast. Can you remind us what is your podcast and what is the name and what is it about?
Yes, so my podcast is the Myths and Folktales and Fairy Tales podcast, and it is just where I talk all about myths, folktales, and fairy tales from all around the world. The first season was like the stories that shaped me. The second season, which is still ongoing, is like creation and underworld myths. I'm hoping to get into Norse next, but I have some bonus episodes coming out before getting into that one. So,
And
yeah.
in your podcast, are they solo episodes like educational, or do you have guests come over as well?
So, right now, it's all been solo and they're educational. But I am gonna have my friend DR Mills. He is the author of Riley Doesn't Want to Fight Evil that came out in 2025. I want to have him on because he had a really cool twist on some of his monsters, and there's some legendary monsters, Mothman and haunted dolls. So we kind of want to talk about like the folklore behind Mothman and haunted dolls from around the world and stuff. And then we'll talk a little bit about Riley Doesn't Want to Fight Evil.
Well, it sounds like a very exciting project that you're doing, and all that you're doing in life sounds very exciting. It sounds like you're very busy. Now, going back to what you were saying in the beginning, you love Halloween, you love
Yeah.
music, specifically rock music, but you also love folklore and mythology. Where would you put at number one from these choices?
Oh gosh. Well, I can't celebrate Halloween all year. I mean, I can, but that's people frown upon that. So, Probably folklore and mythology.
And do you have a favorite story outside of yours, based out of folklore and mythology?
Oh gosh. So from the canon mythology, definitely Medusa. Um, for like non-canon, like other people's works, definitely Lost Gods by Brahm. That book is freaking epic. So if people have not read that, that one and The Child Thief by Brahm as well is just amazing. And both of those are based on mythology and folklore and all that good stuff. So
Awesome. So now I wanted to get into a bit of the world building, but I wanted to l- take a little step back and examine your world, if that's okay, real quick.
yeah.
So you're originally from Nebraska, correct?
So I was born in Wyoming, Gillette, Wyoming, and then we lived in Nebraska for several years when I was very young. And then when I was around 10 years old, we moved from Nebraska back to Wyoming. So I say that I'm from Nebraska and Wyoming. I don't know if that actually counts, but those were like my formative years were
And
spent in those two states.
and today you're in South Dakota, correct?
Yes, yep. South Dakota, because that's where my I met my husband and yeah, he always lived in South Dakota and I just loved when I would visit him and stuff. I just loved it here. So,
So I've never lived in those places, like live, but I've really spent a lot of time in Nebraska. I visited Wyoming. I've been to South Dakota. And uh, I guess something that puts them together in my world is that there's a lot of isolation. There's a lot of
yeah.
there's or either isolation or like in Nebraska especially. I remember seeing a lot of cornfields and just a lot.
Oh my gosh, yes. Whenever we would be driving home, my mom would go, this is where they filmed Children of the Corn." And I would be like, "What's Children of the Corn?" And then I got older and I watched Children of the Corn, and thankfully we no longer lived by where they filmed Children of the Corn.
Oh, you live nearby it?
Yes, like so whenever we would be driving from Nebraska to Wyoming and then back from Wyoming back to Nebraska, we would go through that area. So it would freak my mom out.
So yeah, that's another story. I think who wrote that? Children of the Corn?
Stephen King, I
Stephen King.
think.
Well, yeah, so that's like the setting. There is a lot of isolation and
Mhm.
like Omaha, I would go to the nocturnal animal exhibit. Just but besides that, it's a very quiet place, quiet states. And I'm curious if the solitude, the isolation, if that in any way inspired you with the apocalyptic setting.
Um, I think so, yes, because I've visited like big cities and stuff, and they are really exciting and amazing. But they're not to me, they don't really scare me because there's like so many people around. But yeah, and you're totally right. It is like more isolated. So to me, that kind of which it's funny because I live here, but it does kind of freak me out how like far away we are from real civilization, basically. So yeah, definitely. I always write. I don't think I've ever written anything that takes place in a big city. Even though I've been there and I love, especially like, Denver and Los Angeles. I've been there. I would love to visit New York. Um, those places are amazing. They're so beautiful, but yeah, the isolation thing, it freaks me out. I think it lends well to um more like horror and all that kind of stuff. So,
Cool. So I want to now start getting into your book because now we know you a bit more. I have it right here. I have to keep looking at it. The Skeleton Fairy. First of all, can you tell us a bit
yeah.
about the title?
Yes. So, it used to be called the Bone Fairy, and I wanted to call it the Bone Fairy because I knew there was going to be a lot of bone magic in it. Like from the very beginning I had walking skeletons in my head and I was like, "Okay, yeah, this is definitely what we're doing." And so I named it the Bone Fairy. Well, as I think I was in like the middle of drafting it, I realized there are a ton of books with bone in the title. There's like Nettle and Bone, A House with Good Bones, Silver in the Bone, The Bone Witch. And those are just the ones that I can think of like off the top of my head. But there's just so many with the word bone in it, and I was like, maybe we should change it to skeleton because I feel like that's a little bit more distinct. Not that there's anything wrong with bone. I really liked that original title, but I've like shared titles with other authors in the past. Like I think with The Helm of Darkness, there's a couple of other books called The Helm of Darkness. With Poseidon's Trident, I think there's a couple of other books called that. And there's other books called The Threads of Fate too. And I was like, I don't I when people search this title, I really want them to like be taken straight to my book.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I changed it to The Skeleton Fairy.
And so with the skeleton fairy, we see a post-nuclear apocalyptic world, but also a bit of mythology. How did you mash these two together? Was it exciting? Were you nervous doing this? Tell us about it.
I love this question because it's such a weird mashup. I feel like you don't really see it very often. So I have really always enjoyed like post-apocalyptic stories, but then I've always really enjoyed like fantasy and specifically mythology-based stories, but I can never find them. And I think there's like one other series that I have read that does that. And I read it when I was a lot younger and I was like, I want more of this. Why don't we have more of this? So with my first series, I incorporated some post-apocalyptic elements, but I definitely kept it more on like the fantasy dystopian side. And I regretted doing that because I don't think it's as unique as it could have been if we had done more of the post apocalyptic stuff. So I was like, okay, with this next series, with this fairy series, I want it to be set in a post apocalyptic world. And then for a while I was like, well, actually, it's kind of a weird mashup. And my first series didn't like take off the way that I would have wanted it to when it came out. And so I was like, maybe I should just try doing like normal, more like run of the mill. Not that anything's wrong with that. I love those books. I read them all the time. But I was like, maybe I should write something more like that, more in line with reader expectations. Then I saw the Fallout, the first season of the Fallout TV show, and I was just like, oh my God. This reminded me of all the reasons that I love post apocalyptic fiction, and I got a question stuck in my head, and it was how would a nuclear war on Earth affect fairies and the world of fairy? Because they're in the other world. And yeah, and it just kind of spiraled from there. I was like, you know what? Even if nobody reads this weird thing, I have to get it out of my brain. So
So, what is the story about for those who have never heard of the skeleton fairy?
so it's about this young man. He's 21 years old. His name is Gus, and he lives in this really restrictive, really horrible, like walled off compound in this nuclear post apocalyptic world. And he doesn't want to deal with the status quo. He doesn't want to have like his life just chosen for him. And he is also really obsessed with mythology and folklore, which I basically just wrote myself as a boy in the beginning of that. That was the idea. And and yeah, so Gus is obsessed with these stories, and he is always sneaking into like old ruins and old libraries and trying to find more information about these. And then he meets this young woman named Saoirse, and she is really mysterious. And as they have more interactions and things get really crazy, he finds out that actually all of this mythology and fairies mostly are real, and he's one of them. He is a changeling. He was switched out for a big reason. And so yeah, I won't like say what the big reason was, but yeah, it's kind of like I would say it's kind of like an urban fantasy plot. It's I would say it lines up mostly with like urban fantasy tropes and stuff like that. But yeah, it's about Gus and his journey finding out that fairies exist and navigating the horrors of this post-apocalyptic world, but also the other world.
So you mentioned another character. I'm probably going to butcher her name, Saoirse, whatever. How do you pronounce it?
So it depends on where you're at in Ireland. From what I understand, I obviously I'm not like an expert on the Irish language, but from what I understand, it's either pronounced Saoirse or Saoirse. It just depends on like where you're at and what you prefer, I guess, or I guess what your parents name you. So
Okay. No, so you mentioned the second character. You told us that Gus, the first character, was a bit inspired by you, or you inspired him. Or I don't know. Anyways, so you pretty much wrote yourself as Gus, at least in the beginning. But I'm wondering, for Saoirse, was there anyone who inspired this character, or where did you get your inspiration behind writing her?
so Saoirse came into my mind pretty fully formed. The only thing really that Saoirse and I have in common are that like she has chronic pain and I have some health problems that I kind of pulled on for her chronic pain. And then she really loves moths and butterflies. And other than that, like she just came into my head like fully formed.
Okay. And what was your favorite part about writing this book without giving off any spoilers, like in your writing process?
Um, Probably definitely the research. The research is always like the most fun part, I think. And like the brainstorming process. And yeah, I really liked doing that. I really liked the descriptions too. Like, cause in the past, I feel like I've been kind of skimpy on the descriptions. And so this time around, I wanted to really try to create atmosphere and just do better with my descriptions. And it was so much fun just thinking up of all the different places and the exact words to use to describe them. And yeah.
What was something that you learned during the research that maybe you didn't know before?
Oh my goodness. I learned so much for this book because I had a very limited understanding of Celtic mythology and fairy folklore before. I loved the show Winx Club when I was little. I mean, like I had all the dolls and all the DVDs, and I watched up until season 3 ended, and I just love that show. So I was like, okay, someday I need to write something about fairies because there are fairies in that show. And yeah, so I learned so much stuff because my knowledge of fairies and all that was like Winx Club. And that was it. But one of the things that I find most interesting um, is that fairies haven't always had wings. So, like people, they when you think of a fairy, you think of Tinkerbell, you think of those really pretty like watercolor paintings, and they're just these beautiful little women with lovely little butterfly wings. But that actually didn't really start to crop up until like the late 1700s. Um, and that's when artists they started drawing fairies and they started giving them wings. And sometimes they would give them like bird wings, sometimes bat wings, sometimes insect wings. And it seemed that the insect wings are what really stuck. And ever since then, like our understanding of what a fairy is, like our in our brain when we first think of it, it really hasn't ever been the same. So yeah, I that was one thing that I was like, "Wait, what? Fairies have not always had wings? That is crazy."
So it sounds like you had a lot of fun. In your other books, were there any other things that you've learned during the research as well?
Um, yeah, with my first books, those were Greek mythology, and I was pretty familiar with Greek mythology when I started writing those because I started really liking it when I was little because I watched the Disney movie Hercules, and then I found out that Hercules was actually based on the myth of Heracles and that it was part of this whole like big body of stories from ancient Greece. And I was just completely shook and like I read all of them. And then I found out about like Toy T. Sutherland's work, and she wrote about mythology, and like Rick Riordan wrote about mythology. And I was just totally sucked in to the Greek mythology. So I think I knew like a lot of Greek mythology going in, but I did learn some stuff. Like I learned about the different myths because there are like different versions. Sometimes Medusa was born a monster uh and she just got uh what is the word? She got her head chopped off by Perseus because she was a monster. And then there's some where she was a victim. And um so yeah, it really just yeah, I learned a lot of the different myths, I guess.
And just a quick little segue for listeners, I really encourage them to go listen to your podcast because you do talk a bit about this as well on your podcast about the whole mythology, and you really break it down. And I learned a lot. Just wanted to shout that out real quick.
Oh, thank you.
So now I wanted to go back to the Skeleton Fairy because this isn't your first book. Now with this one, will this be part of a series or is it a standalone book?
Yes, it is the first book in a series. It's called Children of the Death Gods, the series is. Um, and I don't know if it's going to be 3 books or 4 books or even 5 books. When I first like came up with the series, I was like, okay, this is going to be 3 books. I have an idea for what's going to happen. One, two, three. But then that was back when I was still writing my first series. And then I ended up having to split the last book in that series into two. And I was like, well, I don't know if this is for sure going to be 3 books now. And now I'm having like even more ideas. Because there's so much to explore with post apocalyptic settings, and there's so much to explore with fairy lore. So it's like, unless the books were really long, I don't know if we could get through all of it with just 3 books.
So there's going to be a few more coming up. So I'm excited. I
Mhm.
know it takes time to write each book. I'm curious now. Um, as an author, what would you say is more of a challenge? Is it writing the beginning of the book, or is it writing the ending? And I'm also keeping in mind the fact that when you write an ending for this book, you also have the second book coming up next. So for you, like which one would you say is more challenging and which part do you enjoy more?
Oh gosh. Well, this really depends on the book. With the Skeleton Fairy, the beginning was a breeze. I was having the time of my life. I was like, this book is so easy. This is going to be so awesome. I'm going to finish it so quickly. And then I got to the second act and I was like, okay, actually, no, this is not going to go quickly. And I was stuck in the second act for so long because I was just trying to figure out like the tone and the characters. I mean, I knew the characters, but it's different going from YA to adult. Um, and so trying to break free of my YA-ness, that was a challenge. And then writing the ending was also really challenging because I was trying to do it so quickly because the book was coming out so soon, and I had already put it off so many times and we couldn't put it off again. And my editor was like, just finish it. Like, stop overthinking, stop stressing out about things, just write the story that you wanted to write. So I did. I just very quickly like wrote up that ending, and then obviously, fleshed it out a lot more, and my editor fixed it up too. So the beginning was amazing. The beginning was super fun, but then like the second act and the final act were very difficult.
Well,
So,
yeah, so it sounds like it's really been, I mean, you're also growing as an author and you've written a few books already and you're continued to grow and I can't wait to see you as you grow even more. Maybe you said you've never been to New York. Maybe you can do like some kind of a book festival or book something in New York City. That would be awesome. I would love to see that.
That would be
A
so
book
cool.
fair.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, that would be so cool.
Are there any other places that you would like to go? Like let's say for a book fair or just to promote your books?
Oh gosh, really? I mean, okay, let me think. Really anywhere? Like if somewhere asks me, "Hey, do you want to do this book fair?" I'm like, "I'm in." Yeah, that sounds amazing. But like dream places that would ask me probably like I don't know, somewhere in Ireland, probably New York, like like the art museums and stuff. Holy crap, they're so amazing. I would love to do something there. That would be like a dream come true for sure. Um and then probably anywhere in like Wales too, because I learned so much stuff about like Welsh mythology and I was like, this is so rich and cool. And they have actual places in Wales where it's like, this is a portal to the other world. And I'm like, uh, I want to see it.
Well, that would be so awesome if this can happen. Maybe it will. Maybe someone will watch this and say, "Hey, let's get this done. Let's get AP Mobley over here. All expenses paid."
That would be amazing.
Well, you have your book, book one, The Skeleton Fairy, and I'm just curious. Could you see this book being developed into either a film or maybe even a TV series like Netflix or something? And if so, do you have a cast?
This is such a cool question. Um, I mean, I'm biased, but absolutely, I could see it being made into a TV series or a movie. I would be over the moon about that. As for a cast, it's funny. I in my head when I am kind of first thinking about my characters, I try to like pick celebrities that kind of resemble them in my brain. Just so that I can make like folders and stuff and just look at them for inspiration and whatnot. That sounds weird saying it out loud, but it's like integral to the process, or at least my process. Uh, and so with the Skeleton Fairy, I had two actors, and they're too old now to play Gus and Saoirse. But I had for Gus, I had Andrew Garfield. He doesn't look exactly how I picture Gus. He's more good looking, I would say, than Gus. I mean, Gus isn't ugly by any means, but you know, Andrew Garfield is gorgeous. So he's
And Andrew
yeah,
Garfield.
yeah. and then and then for Saoirse, to me in my head, she looks just like Christina Ricci. When Christina Ricci has her blonde hair. I forget what that movie is called, but I mean, Christina Ricci is obviously stunning all of the time, but Christina Ricci, when she has blonde hair, I'm like, oh, that's Saoirse. But yeah, they're Gus and Saoirse are 21, so they'd be too old. Maybe an animated series.
Oh, maybe, yeah. Uh, did Christina Ricci have blonde hair in Sleepy Hollow?
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. It
The
was
giant.
really, really long in that one though. There's another one though where it's like a shorter, it's like shoulder length. But she looks amazing with both
Yeah.
and with black hair and with brown hair and with all of the hair. So,
Well, it'd be cool if it does become either a show or a movie. Maybe not right away, but maybe sometime down the line. I mean, for
mhm,
somebody would can pick it up and make it into a movie. That'd be awesome. Or like you said, like an animated film or show.
that would be so cool. That would be like a dream come true.
So for those who are really interested in getting to read your books, where can they find it?
Um, they can find them, I mean, pretty much everywhere. I mean, Amazon's probably the easiest place, but I mean, they're on Barnes and Noble and BAM and all of those places. And you can actually go in store and order them. And I mean, you can also find them at libraries. Like, not every library will automatically carry them. But if you go and you request and say, hey, I would really like to read this book, can we have it transferred from another library? Or can we order it? They can do that too. But also, my ebooks are available with libraries. So I think that would probably be easier than like paperbacks and hardcovers for the libraries.
So awesome. So, folks who are listening, go check out The Skeleton Fairy by our guest today, A.P. Mobley. And A.P. Mobley, to close this episode out, can I make a request if you can read
Yeah.
just a small part of your book for us?
Yes, absolutely. I've got it over here for just in case we needed to look at it. I'll probably read, let's see, the prologue. Get it over here. All right. Long ago, there was a cauldron that revived the dead. The cauldron was called the Père de Denis, the cauldron of rebirth, and it had various owners over the years. Eventually, it found itself in the hands of an Irish king. The king was cowardly, spiteful. In his weakness, he brought a war upon himself, and during that war, he used the Père de Denis to reanimate the corpses of his fallen soldiers. When the king's enemies discovered what he was doing, they destroyed the cauldron, rendering its powers useless. By all accounts, that was the end of its story. Until now. Dun dun
Hey.
dun.
What an intro. I love it. Well, AP Mobley, thank you so much for being a guest again on Creativity Worth Expressing. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. Audience, listeners, please go ahead and get a copy of The Skeleton Fairy by AP Mobley. And also, please share this episode with your friends so they can also be aware of the books by our guests today. And if you like this episode, please give a like either on YouTube, or if you're listening to this over on Spotify, please give it some stars. That would really help. And if you would like to help me as well, you may do so by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/truth, that H7. That always helps me out to keep this podcast going so I can keep on inviting awesome guests as I did today with AP Mobley. And AP Mobley, thank you again so much for being a guest on this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always such a pleasure talking with you.